Welcome to the Business of Thinking podcast. This is the place for high achievers who want more than motivation. They want mastery. Here we skip the surface level talk and go straight into the psychology of high performance.
Hi, and welcome to the Business of Thinking. My name is Richard Reid, and today I'm joined by Nigel Vardy, who is a mountaineer and sometimes known as Mr Frostbite. Nigel, welcome.
Thank you very much.
Great to have you here. One of the things that we often do just to start these sessions off is just invite people to talk a little bit about their life, things that have maybe informed the person that they've become, and then really sort of bringing it up to the present. And I know there was a particular episode in your life that had a big impact and has shaped a lot of the things that you do now in your life in terms of a career and perhaps the way you think about things. So we'll come on to that very shortly. But tell us a little bit about you growing up, where you grew up, what that was like, and how that shaped the person you are.
Well, I'm a born and bred Derbyshire lad in England. I've never gone far. And I grew up mainly in the outdoors. We had an enormous garden at home. So I spent hours and hours and hours in that. And I'd got catarrh as a child. I'd got an issue that I just coughed all the time. And the doctor said to me, Mum, there's no medicines or whatever's going to help Nigel. Just put him outside all the time as much as you can. So she did. Yeah. So I spent a load of time out there, lots of time hill walking. My father's family had got a dairy farm, so lots of time growing up on the farm as well, which then got me into, say, hill walking with my family, which I took further into mountaineering. And professionally, then I went into, or semi-professionally, I went into mountaineering for a number of years. And I paralleled that as well with a career in electrical engineering in the utility industry. So I worked there for nearly 40 years. And the two paralleled each other. I've retired a couple of years ago now from the engineering, but I'm still climbing mountains across the world.
Brilliant. Thank you for that. And engineering and mountaineering, what are the sort of qualities that sort of touched you in both of those areas that made you want to pursue those things?
I came from that kind of background. My father was an engineer and a very good woodworker as well. So I came sort of a background of working things out, creating things, and apparently when I was really young, taking things apart all the time. And the two do run in parallels in the fact that they both need high levels of organization, high levels of skill, decision making, ability to make choices, and to live with the consequences as well, particularly on the mountaineering side. And the two of them also, I did 24-hour standby in the electricity world and worked shifts as well. And in mountaineering, there is no 9 to 5, 5 days a week. It's a full-on 24/7 job, as engineering was. And so the two ran actually really, really well together.
Okay. And you mentioned the word consequences there. I know there was a particularly seminal moment in your mountaineering career. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Well, yeah, I ended up in Alaska in April, May 1999, climbing on a peak we now call Denali. It was Mount McKinley at the time. And the long and short of it was there were three of us on the trip, myself, Steve and Anthony, and we got caught in a very, very horrific mountain storm, very close to the top of the peak. So it's sort of 20,000 feet up. And you're suddenly put in a position where you're exposed to nature at her worst. It's not like, oh, I can jump in the car, I can go home and shut the door and put the heating on. You're in the middle of nowhere. There is no shelter. And if you don't do something about it very quickly, you're going to die, quite frankly. And that's where all these lessons of youth and lessons of being out day and night on call, on putting up with, unsavory conditions occasionally when you're out on call or out on the farm. You've got to be there. And so you can sort of, it doesn't come sort of naturally, but you just go into a position of, right, what we're going to do about this. Panicking will not help anybody. We need to do something effective. And basically the three of us spent a night out on the top of the peak in a snow hole, trying to stay alive. And we're told the temperatures outside in the winter were minus 60 centigrade. So it's not a place to be.
No.
Even in the snow hole, it's not warm, but it's a damn sight better than being out on the surface. And we got through that night. We tried to get down the next day. Sadly, I was very badly frostbitten. And one of the lads, Steve, went for help. Anthony stayed with myself, and Anthony and myself were helicopter airlifted off that evening. That's after sending distress calls and a great search being created. Steve actually going to try and get help for us actually ended up falling and breaking his legs, and he spent another night on the mountain and
Oh
came back the
wow.
next day. And all three of us ended up being airlifted to hospital in Anchorage, in Alaska, and started journeys. I was 30 years old at the time, and starting a journey where there's a very good chance then I'm going to start losing limbs, digits, and such you don't know early on. And that's a journey that you've got to follow. It's not going to go away. It's not a dream. They will make you look at them all the time. They don't dress frostbite or hide it.
Hmm.
And I worked as something called a control engineer a lot of the time. So we used to control the electrical grid, and we would have control of it, and we would hand systems over to field engineers and take control of discrete sections. And we used to call it, issuing control.
Yeah.
And it made me think when I was in my hospital bed that you're so used to doing everything in your life yourself. And all of a sudden, I've actually got to hand control of my life over to professionals, nursing care, consultants, and such, because I couldn't even feed myself, brush my own teeth. I wasn't allowed to walk. I couldn't use my hands and feet at all. And it was 8.5 weeks before I stood again.
Wow. Wow. So a complete change of pace and tempo, and as you say, relinquishing control in huge ways that we often take for granted.
Absolutely. And when you suddenly realise you can't actually pick a knife and fork up and feed yourself, and somebody's got to brush your teeth for you. I'm a wet shaving man, and I like to be well shaved. Loads of people are, well, I don't do that, and
Mm.
I've got hands like this now, so it's very visible what's happened to my hands.
Yeah.
But you just can't get out of bed and go to the toilet. You just can't go out the room. Everything is on somebody else's permission.
Yeah.
And you've got to get used to that really quickly.
Yeah. And how did you cope with that? Were you able to adapt to that quite quickly, or were there difficulties?
Initially, very badly, and it's just quite hard work that when we slept, what sleep we could get in the beds, we actually had to sleep with our arms up in the air like this to drain the venous return out of the injured hands.
Right.
So that's like being crucified every night.
Wow.
And if you wanted a nurse, you had to hopefully hit the button with your elbow for call. There was no other way of doing it. You feel very marooned in a bed, and I did, and I just started spiraling downward. Really, I was in a hell of a mess, and my sister flew over to Alaska to give me some support, and then in the end, actually, we all flew back together 2 weeks later. Steve's wife had come out as well, and the frostbite stabilised enough to get us home. And I think Alaska's a lovely place and lovely people, but it's not home, is it? You,
Mm.
you want
Mm.
to come back to somewhere local. And me being in Derbyshire, the best local care centre was in Nottingham, being a burns unit, because
Okay.
frostbite is actually a burn. And suddenly you're close to home, friends can visit. I mean, yes, you do have to jump through the hoops of explaining to your family what the hell you've done, but it gives you some support, and I think
Mm.
that's vital to have that background of people that are going to be there for you, because the hardest thing is you can't go to them. They have to come to you.
Yeah.
You can't get out of that bed. So everything that happens over the next 2 to 3 months in my life, I'm relying on people coming to me and relying on their care and love.
Mm. 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 So a complete turnabout in terms of how you'd lived your life up until that point. And what were the
Yeah.
physical injuries? You showed us your hands. What was the full extent of your injuries?
Well, yes, obviously, all fingers amputated off the tips, both thumbs. I lost all of my toes, the ball on my left foot as well, both heels. And this nose of mine is actually a graft from my forehead. My old nose fell away. There's a big scar, I'll get it right there, where there's a big chunk of dead skin. That fell away as well. So it's the digits, it's the extremities as we call them, because with frostbite, you're not getting enough blood flow to them.
Mm.
The veins and arteries are frozen, and then when they thaw out, they collapse.
mm,
So no blood gets there. So basically, they just go black and die,
mm,
and amputation is the only way.
mm, mm.
So there was, I guess, there was coming to terms with the physical injuries, but I guess identity is probably attached to that as well, isn't it? In terms of how you would have viewed yourself prior to that and how that might have been affected.
I mean, certainly, I was really scared when I came out of hospital that nobody would ever want to know a man with a scarred face and no fingers. And my feet didn't bother me so much. And I think that's because when you put shoes on, nobody can see.
Yeah.
But actually, visually, I felt really quite embarrassed, I suppose. And it soon became apparent that wasn't an issue. And I remember one of the doctors saying to me, my nose had fell away. This new one wasn't put on for a couple of years to let the scarring settle. And his view was, you can breathe, it's fine, off you go. And I was approached very early, although it never came off, by an author or a book company who were actually making a book on facial scars.
Okay.
And they'd got all kinds of pop artists and authors and actors and actresses who had got scars because of whatever.
Mm.
And the fact that they'd lived with them and they got on with life. And actually, when I first heard about that, I thought, we can get on with this. It's just the fact that I'm just a bit, the inside's the same, Nigel. I'm just a bit different on the outside now.
Mm. Mm. And how long do you think it took you to sort of come out of the full impact of what had happened and start to feel like you were moving forward?
Ooh, I don't think I can put a date on that, really. It's you make great leaps forward, but you do take leaps back as well. So,
Yeah.
the first day I walked 8.5 weeks in was incredibly special.
Yeah.
But you have to mitigate how you walk. You can't just run on the first day. To be able to actually then get out of a wheelchair on my own for the first time, go on crutches. But then we found that my heels weren't closing. Though the tissue was there, the skin wouldn't actually close over the top. So I would go back in for theatre and they'd regraft them. So you're back stuck in bed for 2 weeks. So you've only just got up, now you're told to sit down for 2 weeks. And on a number of occasions, they'd take the dressings off 2 weeks in and go, it's all failed, go home, you'll have to come back again. So you get back up again and you feel, well, that was a waste of time. And then you go back in a few weeks, they do it all again, and then we did it again and it failed again. And I think it was the third time now it actually worked. So you do feel like you're making progress, but then you're going back. I think the biggest thing is keeping an eye on the bigger picture. As in, I was 30 at the time. I was hoping I had a lot more life to give. Therefore, put the time and effort and patience in now,
Mm.
and then in the future it will reap rewards.
Mm. Mm. And when we were chatting before we did this recording, you told me a great story about when some friends took you out to IKEA, and it's a great story in terms of your resilience, I guess your sheer pig-headedness, if you don't mind me saying so, but also your engineering skills coming to bear. Do you want to tell us a little bit about that?
Certainly, if anybody's been in a wheelchair and you're perhaps nearly going to get out, for some people, obviously, it's the rest of their lives. But growing up in Derbyshire, we don't have flat ground around here, so wheelchairs are a nightmare. And I just couldn't get out much. And then some friends rang one day and just said, look, we're going out for the day. Do you want to come? And he just grasped it. Absolutely. Come on, where are we going? And IKEA. Now, I'm not a great fan, but what I will say is this. It's perfectly level. It has really wide aisles. It's ideal for people on wheels. And I thought, okay, fine. So in we went. And all my friends are looking at kitchen units and rugs and light fittings. And we went into a section that had all the handles on a wall. So it was every handle from every IKEA drawer, wardrobe, cupboard, whatever, just on a board. And I said to them, will you please leave me here? And they sort of looked at me a bit gone out. I said, no, it's fine, just leave me here. Because what I could do is actually hold and feel all these different handles and fittings and all kinds of things to actually see if I could hold them. And this is something you can't learn online or in a book, or it's a very tactile, physical thing. And because they put, there's probably 60 or 70 styles there, I can go, does this work? Does that work? Can I pull it? Can I get a finger in? and very quickly realize these work and these don't. And that stayed with me a long time because I tend to find the modern world is all online, which is fine, and it's all very technical. So you'll go, I don't know, buy a new car or a replacement car, and they'll be telling you about, Apple CarPlay and it's got self-driving capability and all kinds of magic. But it's absolutely hopeless if I can't open the door or press any of the buttons because my fingers are too fat. But what we do is we get drawn into this magic world of flashing lights and gizmos, which is great. But if I can't hold the gear stick, it's absolutely no use to me. And I've had to, live my entire life like that now, based on I need to physically feel the thing, pick it up, touch it, try it before I buy it. And that's something from the 1970s because everybody wants to be so online now. And whereas I actually, Lord forbid, go into shops and talk to people because I need to pick things up. And it's the same with footwear. I need to wear them and try them. It's pointless me ordering them.
Mm, mm. But it strikes me that example of you, IKEA, that's you starting to take back a little bit of control, starting to shape your environment to work more for you.
Yes, absolutely. And, having the engineering background, I'm very methodical on things like that. Yet on other sides, when I was in hospital, there's an occupational therapy department. And they were very much, there used to be this standard thing of we can't discharge you till you can boil a kettle and make a meal
Yeah.
and make a cup of tea. And, this place has got all magic gadgets and things to lift things up, and it's all lovely. But what I said to them is I don't really want it. If I've got to have it, I will. But they did let you try. You could have a go with these things. It was very full on. And when I was getting around to an ability to write, again, all these magic gadgets appear. And I said, look, I just want to be able to write, and I don't want to need to traipse a pen around the world with me and only have that one that I can hold.
Yeah.
I want to pick up any old biro or any old fountain pen, and I want to write. And so I got a load of scrap paper. I got my family to bring a load of pens in, and then in the nicest way of saying it, it was, "Will everybody just get out of my face?" Because nobody likes to be watched, but also I can't learn if you keep doing it for me. And it was frustrating, and no doubt I threw a few pens across the room, but I taught myself to write in 3 days. And it's not dissimilar handwriting from before. It's a bit slower now. I get a bit more aches in the hands.
Yeah.
But it's that physical hands-on. I can now write again. As you say, I can hold things again. I'm working out what this body of mine can do. And I'm very much, do not give me adaptions because it's for me to adapt.
Yeah. Yeah. Interesting. And
Because I find a lot of people will get into this world of, I can't do that because the adaptation doesn't work. I can't do that. And what they start doing is putting barriers up for no reason.
Yeah.
What they need is a kick up the backside to say, actually, it's you that needs to adapt. Yes, there are certain things you'll need things for. That's the way it is. But you need to adapt. That's why we've become the apex, species on this planet.
Yeah. 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 Totally agree. Totally agree. And obviously now you do a lot of keynote speaking around your experiences. Tell us about some of the insights. You've really touched on some of this, but tell us more about the insights that you've gleaned from those experiences of being in adversity that maybe you share with other people now.
Certainly, people need to understand that the world is not a jolly. And more I see people struggling to cope with any kind of criticism, any kind of difficulty. And being in the electricity industry, I might get a phone call with this 8,000 people with no electricity and there's snow and hail and floods and all the rest of it. I just go, that's fine. Come on, let's get on with it then. There is no need to panic. There is no need to shriek with high voices. Just calmly approach the work. And if anybody's had a paramedic come round the house or you've had to call one, I hope not, but if they have, you'll never see them run into an incident. So what I've always done is literally in the field and on the mountain or in the control room, when it all goes mad, I very calmly walk into the situation, assess it, and then start dealing with it because flapping around, screaming and shouting will not create any benefit at all. In fact, it will only wind other people up.
Mm. Mm. And is that something you've naturally done from an early age, or is that something you've learned and practiced? I just think that's
I
probably
think some
relevant
of
for a
it,
lot of people. Yeah.
yeah, I think a lot of it's just come with that life of when you're very young and you're working on a farm, things go wrong. It's pouring wet through, it's cold, it's dark, cows still want milking.
Yeah.
These are before the days of all the automation. So they don't care how ill you are or what a bad night you had or how foul the weather is. They want milking.
Yeah.
And so what you learn to do is appreciate the arena you're in. So it could be we need to assess danger here because there's going to be an avalanche on a mountain, or I'm out on standby
Mm.
and there were floods. So we can't just go rushing in. We appreciate what there is, and then we try and find manageable ways round to achieve as much as we can. Sometimes you can't do everything. Don't
Mm.
think you can.
Mm.
But sometimes you can say, well, actually, I can't do 100%. It's not physically achievable, but I can get 85. So stop running away from the problems and saying, what actually can we do,
Yeah.
not what can't we do?
Yeah. So it stops becoming that zero sum, doesn't it? It's looking at the bit of nuance that sometimes exists in situations rather than it's all or nothing. Yeah.
Mm. And never ever chase the lowest common denominator. Again, I've worked with people who will try and do everything either on the cheap because it's quick, or they'll do it fast because they think they can get away with it. And again, it's the paramedic thing. They don't rush in, even if, Lord forbid, one of your family members having a cardiac arrest. They do not rush in. They come in, they assess, they carry out what work they need to do, and hopefully everybody's fine.
Mm.
It's just keeping your senses visually open as well. And then you can sometimes, if you've done it long enough, you'll gain that sixth sense of there's something not right here. And it's really difficult to explain. And I've actually had situations before where senior managers have said to me, you've got to do something because
Mm.
we used to be timed. You've got to do something. And I've said, I'm not doing a thing. Why? And this was just, and I was actually teaching, I was teaching an apprentice at the time. And this poor lad's really quite scared because this manager's having a go at
Stuck in the
him.
middle. Yeah.
But I was old enough and grumpy and ugly enough to say, I know what I'm doing, and there's something not right here.
Mm.
We are not just doing that for the
Mm.
sake of a figure and a minute. We are going to investigate this properly. And we did, and there was something very badly wrong going on. And it's just that when you've been in the trade long enough, when you've been in situations, so what I say to people is you can't learn mountaineering sat at a TV screen. You can't learn engineering sat at a TV screen. You can't learn life sat at a TV screen. You have to actually be up to your knees in it.
Yeah.
That's where you start to learn.
Yeah. Yeah. So it's not waiting for the perfect moment. It's learning as you go, seeing things as a progression. Yeah.
Yes, and I also am connected. I'm president of a mountain rescue team here in Derbyshire, and we though we have blue light capability to drive out, we assess situations very carefully, and we'll come out day and night as volunteers to help people, but fools rush in.
Mm.
And if you're in a very critical situation in poor light visibility and you're trying to help somebody, the last thing you want is another casualty.
Mm. 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 And that's the risk, isn't it? If you make assumptions about what's going on and you dive in without reflecting. Yeah.
Yeah, yeah,
Yeah.
yeah.
And you've sort of touched on it there, but I wanted to ask you more detail. What happened a few years ago meant for your mountaineering career?
I mean, physically, it slowed me down, and I'm just not as fast as I was, and there's obviously some age connected with that as well now. And my hands don't climb as well, so
Mm.
again, I have to reconsider. But again, I reconsidered what I could achieve, not what I can't achieve.
Yeah.
So rather than going on about I can't climb some great graded route anymore, I went, yeah, but I can go up here and it's lovely.
Yeah.
And something to me that's very important is technology, i.e., switch it off. More and more we see people, I'll go into the mountains and they'll be looking at a mapping application or they'll be picking up a message or whatever. There is such a glorious, beautiful world out there. Please take it in and please open your eyes because here is where you learn.
Mm.
And, you know, by going through the experience of frostbite, and people very often say to me, it must have been the most hideous thing in your life, Nigel. And yeah, it was probably. And I'd go through it again because the learning experience it gave me is unmatched in any other field I've ever known. Now, believe me, I don't want people to have to go and have an accident to learn. That's the last thing
No,
I want.
no.
And that's one of the major reasons I go out and speak and try and share knowledge. But for me, it's been such an eye opener that, people say, what would you like? I'd love my fingers and toes back. I really would. Don't get me wrong. It would
Mm,
make life a
mm,
lot easier.
mm.
But I never want to lose every minute of pain, every minute of learning, every minute of recovery, because they're the greatest lessons I can ever learn.
Really interesting. And I fully subscribe to that. It's often the things that we wouldn't choose from a menu of events that the things that inform us in the
Yeah.
strongest ways. Stay in your comfort
Yeah.
zone slows down your learning and your progression, doesn't it?
Oh, well, I do a lot of work in Key Stage 2 schools, and
Okay.
you've got youngsters with really open eyes, aren't afraid to ask questions. This is great. And you'll get everything from how do you tie the shoelaces to how do you go to the toilet with no fingers. You'll
Mm.
get the lot. Um, but the fact is that when I say to them, do you like your comfort zone? And you obviously explain with it with the teachers what it is, and they'll go, yes, and that's great. You're going to learn nothing, not a thing.
Yeah.
You have to get out of it. You have to scare yourself. Don't go and do anything silly. But unless you feel uncomfortable, you ain't learning.
Yeah. Yeah. Totally agree. And if you're somebody who's frightened of taking that step to feel uncomfortable, are there sort of ways that you can ease yourself into that?
Well, so in mountaineering, there's plenty of ways because I often get asked by people or parents and such, how I'd like to try some climbing. What can I do? Go to a climbing wall, go to an indoor climbing wall, get some lessons.
Mm.
I would recommend that. And like everything, I was an electrical engineering apprentice at 16. I did a 4-year apprenticeship. And I do speak to a lot of people about this. Go and serve your apprenticeship. So put the time in to learn how to tie knots, how to put a harness on correctly, how to assess and belay and what kit and things you need to use. And then as you do it, you start gaining confidence and
Mm.
skills. And then you might meet other people who say, we're doing this. Do you want to join in and join a club? And
Mm.
all this time put in advance is utterly vital when you get out on the mountain. Nobody climbs Everest in a day. And though we do hear horror stories of people going there with very, very little experience, you really should not be tackling major mountains in the world or canoe trips or whatever sport or pastime you choose to have. And engineering, I would not go in at day one and start switching high voltage switchgear.
Yeah.
You spend years of training.
Yeah.
And then, and it's like, of course, when you do your driving test, you've always got somebody next to you. And then the first day when you've passed and there's nobody in the car,
That's when it
oh, the
starts.
first hour or two are a bit, oh, what have I done? But suddenly it becomes second nature. You've learned, but that doesn't mean you shouldn't keep learning. And that's one of the greatest things in life.
Yeah, yeah, and I really like what you were saying there about putting the apprenticeship in, whether it's a formal apprenticeship or
Mm.
just applying yourself over a period of time, because I think it's probably ever thus, but even more so in modern society, we want things to be quick, don't we? We want quick results, and if we don't get quick results, often we don't do things.
Absolutely. And again, you don't become an expert in a sport, an art, or whatever. You may have talent, but you don't become an expert in a day.
Hmm.
And yeah, I've worked with some projects where people have interviewed some of the highest ranking sporting and sort of actors, actresses, all this kind of thing in the world, and say, how did you get here? And what so few people see is the years
Hmm.
of hard
Hmm.
work and the hours and hours of training, rehearsals, make everything that goes in for that 30 seconds on
Hmm.
screen.
Hmm.
But of course, nobody wants to hear that bit. What they want is, as you say, here's the action. Thank you very much. Well, hey.
Overnight success.
Whereas
Yeah.
but success does not come overnight.
Hmm.
It takes decades for some people. Some people might be lucky and get a break. Other people keep grinding their nose on day by day. But success is actually, for me, just really being very purposeful and not stopping. Keep at it because you will get there.
Yeah, yeah. Fantastic. Fantastic. Any last words for people before we wrap up? Anything that you think would be useful for people at home, particularly from a business background, to be mindful of in terms of the experiences and insights that you've had?
Take decisions based on the information that you have and stand by them. But also never be frightened to change if the circumstances change. You can nail your colours to the mast a bit too hard some days, and then new information comes in, and you think, oh, righto, because obviously we're on the storm in the mountain; it's changing every minute. So you reassess, you constantly reassess, and you can make all the plans in the world. You can have folders galore on your cabinets, but not one of them will survive first contact with the enemy. So sometimes you need to have a plan. You do. You need to have a robust system that will carry that plan for you. But sometimes you've just got to run with how the world goes.
Mm, mm. And that's exactly what you've done, isn't it, in terms of your own life experience?
Yeah, and I'm still mountaineering. I'm off to have a crack at the world's highest altitude marathon next year in the Atacama Desert.
Wow.
I'll not be running, not with my feet, but I can support other people.
Yeah.
And that's another big lesson as well. I know I can't do some of the things that I would have done should have had fingers and toes now, but that doesn't mean I can't support others and I can't share my knowledge and benefit to help them, which I think is a very vital part of management and of coaching. And share knowledge freely. There's no black arts. Share it freely. Help people out when they're struggling, and then everybody, of course, benefits in the future.
Yeah, fantastic. Thank you so much, Nigel. And if anybody wants to find out more about the work that you do, where can they find that out?
Well, they can just type Nigel Vardy into search engines, and it will usually come to me. And just earlier this year, we launched a documentary on Amazon Prime called Frostbitten. It's also on Apple TV and Adventure Sports TV. And that's about me actually going back to the mountain I nearly died on 25 years later to not only see the mountain, but to do something that's very personal for me, which was to find some of the people that saved me and treated me and say thank you.
Fantastic. We'll share some of the links when this goes to broadcast. But Nigel Vardy, it's been an absolute pleasure. Thank you so much for your time.
Pleasure. Thanks, Richard. Take care.
This is the business of thinking. Mastery doesn't end here. See you in the next episode.